So as Michael said, Jerry's not here tonight, so somehow I get the honors of introducing Michael. Not sure how that happened, but so exciting to be a part of a group like this. I just get so much energy every time I walk in here. And I used to go to meetings like this just because I thought I'm learning about real estate. And I still love to do that, but I realized it's way, way bigger than that. So a little bit about Michael. Michael's background includes founding his first company at age 21 and humanitarian efforts in more than 20 countries. Within 4 years of leaving full-time ministry, Michael and his family achieved financial freedom. After retiring in his early 30s, Michael quickly realized a life of leisure was unfulfilling and turned his focus toward creating an investment education community and investment opportunities for others. Today, Michael actively syndicates a variety of real estate projects, owns and operates a property management company, and co-hosts the Elevate Investing Group with Jerry Horst, where they teach about financial freedom and mentor others in syndicating deals, which we are also blessed to be a part of. Michael Manthei lives in Lancaster, PA, with his beautiful wife, Kristen, and 2 daughters. So if there's something that sticks out to me there, it's in the second paragraph where it says Michael quickly realized a life of leisure was unfulfilling. I hope that we never think our worth is in like how many units we own, how many houses we own, what our net worth is. But I think there is something very significant about just growth in general, about serving others, just contributing to the good of others. And what I have seen in Michael in a number of years of knowing him as a friend and in business, Michael is such a good example of that. The way that he treats his tenants is very, very unusual, and it has totally changed how they do business. This past Christmas, they invited all their local tenants to a banquet at Shady Maple. They invited like 100 plus tenants to come out for a Christmas banquet. Didn't sound like they all were able to make it, but just a very different way of doing things. I think it's fair to say the way they manage things, it takes a lot less staff per tenant than most management companies would. I've heard Michael's story quite a few times, and I am really excited to hear it again. So help me welcome Michael Manthei.
Awesome. Well, it's always interesting to be writing your own marketing information, but I appreciate Jake helping out and doing intros. So let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen tonight. Before I go into this, tonight for me is Kristen and I. She's hopefully coming. It's like every month our babysitter, self-destructs. This month we woke up sick and couldn't come, and the other babysitting service didn't have anybody. So she's hoping to bring the kids in and say hi. But this is really her and I, whether I'm the only one up here or not, opening up our lives, our souls, our journey for the inspiration and impact it can have to everyone here. So just a little bit of overview for tonight. So my why, we'll talk about this, and it's just one of them. I have many whys. This one is being able to go where I want, do what I want, with who I want, anytime I want, without being limited by finances. Now, we all have different whys and different things of why we've been created, but how many people, there's something about that resonates with?
Amen. Yeah, that's good.
That to me is freedom. So we'll talk about that. Then we're going to jump in, calling it Behind the Curtain from Zero to Financially Free. We're going to go through, it took us about 10 deals to get to the point that we had enough investment income to cover our living expenses. So for each deal, we're going to go through the number of units that the deal was, our all-in cost, how we financed it, and monthly cash flow. All right, so these are real numbers. These are not examples, which examples are fine, but something different about a true life story. We'll talk about some conclusions, and then we'll have a question and answer time. I'm recommending to write down your questions. We're actually going to cover a lot of different things. So if you have a question, anything specific about a deal, anything specific about anything, our lives, how we invest, how we find capital, all of that is fair game tonight. I reserve the right to not answer, but I welcome you to ask anything you want. Oh, come on. Now would be the time for my little sweetheart to walk through. But we will, if she's not here in the next 15 seconds, we'll do it and I'll show her the video online. So first, a favor, if you please. My beautiful Serena is turning 5 today. That's her being silly face, which is often on her expression. Well, come on, the door's budging. See if that's my family. You think it is?
Yeah, it is.
Are you serious? What the world?
Yeah.
It's unreal. Hey, beautifuls. Sweethearts, do you want to come up here? Come. Who is on the big TV? Come, girls, come. Do you want to show off your birthday dress? Hi, Gabby.
Happy
Yes. Gabby, do you want to show your yellow dress?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Serena. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, beautiful. How old are you now?
5.
What did you do at school today?
I don't know.
What
Yeah,
are you doing tomorrow?
I don't know. Yeah.
Just as an I don't know it's today. Gabby, do you want to say anything? Okay. All right, sweeties. Thank you for coming up here. All right. Hey, sweetie. Welcome. All right. Well, thanks for the little family moment. It's her actual birthday today, so this is awesome.
Perfect.
All right, so now we're going to jump into it. So getting to go where I want, when I want, with who I want, whenever I want, has been a really big deal to me. You guys know these two? If you don't, they would be ones to write down. The real estate guys. This is Robert Helms and Russell Gray. If you were a part of our 2-day event, Robert was unbelievable. He was amazing. Part of that. So these two have mentored Jerry and I in syndicating real estate projects. They've turned into friends and are just great guys. Unfortunately, Russ lost his wife at the end of last year. After just some difficult years with her. Was very impressed with how he supported and cared for her during that time and put her first. But they had a celebration of life. This was maybe a month ago, and it was just amazing to get to fly out for it just to support a friend. I was going to fly out and back in one day. I did that to celebrate the godfather of real estate's birthday. Flew out at like 7 a.m. and got back at it was a red eye, like 7 a.m. the next day. When you have kids, your time value just goes up quite a bit. But this time we did 2 days. So I was there Saturday, Sunday. Got to stay in this incredible place that my friend Mike and Kara Ayala own. This is us on his podcast. recording an episode. Who knows what kind of car that is? What?
That guy don't have a job.
Can you guys see the license plate from where you are? If that isn't the most hilarious picture that communicates so much of the reality of our society, that's so different than what we get taught in school. Everybody in school is getting rewarded for, you know, all the correct answers. And if you can't see it, it says C student. It's the license plate on the Ferrari. So that is just hilarious to me. I saw this and I think I knew it was between 1 or 2 people out in Phoenix, Arizona. Anybody want to guess who owns that car?
Robert Kiyosaki.
That was my first guess. That was one of the 2.
And macaron.
Ken McElroy. Woo! Guy's got some personality. So we have you guys done Topgolf? We've done Topgolf. Oh my word, that is fun. It's basically playing a game
Yes, it is.
on at a driving range. But this was an amazing experience. You know, I go out to celebrate a friend, and obviously we didn't take pictures at the Celebration of Life service, but get to hang out with these guys, Mauricio Raul, Mike Ayala and his family. This is Andrew Lanoy, their business partners, and the great Ken McElroy, who's just incredible. We're sitting at, this is kind of interesting, we're sitting here and he's asking me what I'm up to, and I'm telling him about the group, and believe it or not, he's legitimately impressed. He's like, wow, you have like great engagement, great people, great turnouts. Yeah, it's amazing. Our people are awesome. So that was really fun, a special thing. So just to get to fly out and be with a friend and a mentor when they're going through something hard was such a gift to me. Chris and I just got back from that being our review for 7 days in the beautiful island of Cozumel, instead of Hawaii, Mexico. That was pretty fun, wasn't it, sweetheart? And I didn't hear what she said, but it wasn't just a random trip. We took a baby moon because inside my wife's beautiful belly is our 3rd child.
Yes.
We're very grateful. Had an awesome time getting away, just spending time together. My mom was gracious enough to fly in from Minnesota to watch the kids with a lot of help from Julie and others. This was the view for breakfast every day, right on the water, papaya, mango, pineapple. We took a scooter around the island. It was pretty fun. We did wear helmets. This was after the great food, great view. This was my wife's view for several of the days. This is about as close as she got to scuba diving. That's not true. Actually, she got her face in the water this trip, tried snorkeling. She pretty much enjoyed it. A little bit, half and half. But she'll try it again. All right, so my wife told me there's a little bit much on the scuba diving, so we're going to go as quickly through this. But this was a lifelong dream to me. Got certified a couple months ago, and there's just something about being down there with the fish. It's just a complete other world. I was looking at the fish, and then there's a spiny lobster shaking his antenna at me. Is anybody scuba diving here? Couple? And that's just beautiful. Lobster out and about. This one has like gold gilded scales, which is pretty cool. I did a night dive, which I've always wanted to do. I didn't know how bright my spotlight would be on the camera, so you can hardly see my videos. But this thing was cool. It was licking its forked tongue out. I don't know what it was doing, but the fish go to sleep at night. So you see them like real lethargic, just going and then laying on the sand. It's amazing. This is a crab. Again, it's too bright, but he's putting something in his mouth. This is pretty cool. Keep your eyes over there. That's a puffer fish. So amazing. Can't see him, but he's there. This is the last one. This thing was so beautiful to me. If you have any kids and you've seen the Pow Pow Fish book, that's what this thing reminds me of.
Wow.
Fluorescent.
Wow. Yeah.
So, getting to do, when you can go where you want, do what you want, with who you want, whenever you want, without being limited by finances, that's freedom. That's one measure of freedom. It's, you know, if you know anything about us and our group, we live in an awareness that there's a whole lot more to reality than the numbers in your checkbook, the business strategies, and everything that we respect and love. But this is an important part of freedom. If you're limited and you can't do what's in your heart to do, that's not very cool. There's a concept, and I think it's probably more prevalent in more conservative areas, which it seems like this is a more conservative area. I don't know what you guys think, but where it's like, hey, if I can just have enough for my own needs, that's all I want. Like that's, you know, then I'll be happy. I don't want too much. I just want enough to cover our basic needs. Not too extravagant, not too flashy. And if you actually think about it, that is the most selfish
That's right.
mindset that you could possibly have. To only think about yourself, to only think about barely covering what you need to survive for you and your family.
Amen.
Where's the abundant life that, I mean, a lot of those mindsets come from a Christian biblical, for whatever twisted reason. It seems to go together sometimes. Where's the abundant life? Like, where's the overflowing, more than enough life that I think we all know is true and available to each one of us?
Amen.
So, we're not interested in just barely enough. We're interested in blowing the flipping doors off the potential that God's put
Yeah.
and created us to be,
Yes.
so that we can have an impact,
Amen.
so that we can change the world, so that we can change lives.
Amen.
But here's a little secret. Stay content through the process. You know, different personalities need to hear different messages. You know, the person that's really passive doesn't really need this message.
Yeah.
You know, they need something else like get your butt in gear, take action, pull the trigger. But a lot of the people that I meet in investor circles are a little bit more driven, a little bit more ambitious. And if you don't have the right mindset, you'll get, it's almost like, I don't want to say pissed off, but it's like you can get upset, you can get frustrated, you can like, okay, why is this taking so long? Why isn't this working for me? Or why does it work for the guy in the front, but that's not my experience? Have you ever heard all overnight successes took 20 years? You just don't see the 20 years. You just see the,
That's right.
you know, when
Yeah.
the plant pushes out of the
That's
ground, you
right.
never see the root development.
That's right.
It'd be interesting to get my mom's perspective, but nobody was around in the 10 years, traveling all over the world, doing the most ridiculous things. Don't know where your next meal is going to come from. Internal development to be able to support what we're doing now. So, not everybody in the room can go out and buy an investment property tomorrow, but everybody in the room can be a better person tomorrow. And I'm convinced that your internal reality is what determines your external reality.
Amen.
You can't always match that up.
Right.
And there's people that use principles. There's people that even get ahead by screwing other people. I mean, there's different ways to do this thing. But there is a way that each one of us can pursue that has to do with finding out who we are, being true to who we are, and letting our internal character develop completely independent of what's going on the outside. So for 10 years, when I didn't have two nickels to rub together, I was in a process of development. You're gonna hear one part of it tonight. You're gonna hear the part where, you know, within 2 years, we bought 50 properties, 50 units, and, you know, financially free and whatever. I mean, I joke with Kristen, we should hire a late night infomercial production team and go on late night TV, because it's like, it's almost an impossible story. But what isn't impossible is, and you know what, I should, in the front row is my friend Cinco Steendam, and his granddaughter and friend drove all the way down from Connecticut. It's like a 5-hour drive, one way, for a 2-hour meeting. You were with me during that time. Holy smokes, we had some experiences that were off the charts, not focused on anything external, but focused internal, and focused between me and my Creator. That's the number one thing that we can each build. So we're gonna talk about the external, and it's a beautiful thing when they come together. But stay content through the process that you're going through. We each have our own journey. There's something impactful and inspiring about seeing somebody else's journey. So that's what we're here to do tonight. You have your own, but I think there will be things that you pick up tonight. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've been around teachers that they know the right words. It's like they memorized the textbook before they got to the meeting or before they got to the class. And it's like, da, 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 da. There's no like substance. There's nothing to take away from it. You can learn some concepts, some precepts that way. But when you have someone that's actually walked it out and been there, there's something completely different that's available in the room, and that's what we are, that's what we're leaving for tonight. Who knows those two? That's the greatest quality picture. This is Kim Kiyosaki, Robert Kiyosaki. This quote changed my life. When your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses, you can retire. So when your investment income exceeds what you need to live on, so not what you're working for, not what you trade your time for, but what is completely independent of your time. When you build that income enough to where it supports your required living expenses, you don't have to go to work anymore. It's a beautiful thing. That thing got lodged in my heart. And we jumped in. Sweetheart, are you up for helping me on this one? Awesome. A rare treat. The beautiful Chris and Mandy. This is fun. We got some other people that contributed to this one in the house tonight. Great. What's up, girl? Awesome. Great. And Serena, if you have anything to say, you just let me know. Okay. All right, so I came off the mission field. I was negative net worth, let's be honest. I mean, we're still red numbers, it's never good. So, I was 29 years old, you know, you're real proud about to marry a lady. Anyway, she had been very responsible, lived at home for 10 years, gone without a lot that she could have had, and had saved $25,000. You know, there's a lot to buy in your 20s and teens where, you know, it's not that easy to save $25,000, but she did it. So we get married, and I've been reading these real estate books for years. And I'm well aware that reading a book is never going to get you ahead in life. I mean, it can change your mindset, but if you don't go out there and do something with that knowledge, it's completely useless. You know, the person that reads a book and never does anything with it is just as good off as the person who never reads the book.
Yeah.
So it isn't the reading, it's in applying the knowledge. So I came to Kristen, actually, no, I went out to breakfast with the gentleman in the fourth row here, Gideon Lapp. Flew in from Oklahoma this morning to be here. Amazing. You guys have, God's used you guys so much in our lives. These guys are in this story, got us involved with our first rental property, connected me with the awesome job that I got within a week of moving to Lancaster from New Zealand and Minnesota. You told us about our house, where we built our new house. You connected us with Julie, who's been the rock star of all these meetings. So you guys are so
So
grateful for
if you
this.
need any miracles in your life,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
anything happen, just take with these two. That's what happened.
Gideon learned a lot.
Yeah. It's true.
So I go out to breakfast with Gideon. Gideon's been investing for years at that point. And I'm asking him all kinds of questions that you do in your beginning, and you know, he's very gracious and giving me the answers. And then he says, hey, I have a foreclosure under contract that the bank has been dragging their feet. You know, now it's 7 months later or whatever it was, and I have 2 of my properties that went vacant. I'm renovating them. I'm in the middle of big projects. So I'm gonna let this one go. But he's like, my realtors worked hard. It'd be nice if she got the commission. When I withdraw, you could put your name in and probably pick up the contract. Now keep in mind, Kristen's got $25,000 in the bank.
Back of his mind.
So I asked, you know, how much is it? He said, well, it's $25,000. Oh, that's very interesting. So we go back home, and here's my sales pitch. Sweetheart, I've been reading book after book after book. Even if we lose everything on this deal,
What?
at least we'll be in the game. At least we'll be really learning. It wasn't a very good sales pitch. But, so we talked about it. Here's one thing that I picked up from my years in ministry. I have something in me, and probably a lot of you do as well. I'm like hyper-focused on learning important lessons through other people's mistakes so that I don't have to make the same mistakes. You realize we don't have to figure out everything for ourselves. Like, if somebody else has figured something out, I respect them. It costs them pain to get there. I'd like to skip all that pain and just get the lesson. Here was the lesson. I heard about 4 or 5 men that I respected. And the older guys in the room are going to be shaking their heads. The younger guys are going to be like, that sounds kind of hokey pokey. But here's the lesson. Most of the time, when God speaks to you, it's going to come through your wife. And if you don't learn to value her intuition and value her voice and input in the relationship, you're going to be sorry. It took me, you know, each guy would say something to the effect that it took me years and years to learn this, and I wish I would have learned it sooner. So I heard that enough times where I'm like, ding, 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 you don't want that lesson. So we'll either be in unity on stuff or we won't do it. It's that simple. So as we're talking about this deal, she's not really feeling it.
I wasn't, and I think also it was really my initiation into switching from conventional thinking as far as like, it's great to save, it's important to save, and I was thinking, you know, that 25,000 wasn't a huge number, but it was a big deal at the time. It was a big number, and so I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, we haven't bought a house for ourselves yet.
We're still
renting. What if we get pregnant before we're expecting? Like, what are we gonna do? And I have this like idea in my mind of like, what if we lose everything? Like, what are we gonna do? I mean, we're late 20s, like we have the rest of our lives to figure that one out. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it was kind of, it put some light on where my thinking really was, which was important.
And you also had been counseled from your parents who have been very successful financially, the kind of people you would listen to save money, don't spend everything in one place, have something for a rainy day, which is good advice for a young single lady. Like, that's good advice. So, and she's looking at her new husband, I mean.
I knew him as like a man I really respected in ministry. I'd heard him speak many times. We've been on different mission trips together, so I knew like I trusted his depth and his character. But he had no real business background for me to point at. For me, like, oh, let's get real, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was kind of how it was. So, yeah.
Okay, so she says, we're talking about it, and not really feeling it. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not trying to push this thing. I'm looking for God's wisdom in our life. So she says, hey, let's go talk to my parents. I'm like, yeah, it's a great idea.
After a week of trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have an ego in this, we'll go talk to your parents. I don't think it was until the ride over that I realized the position I was in. Here's a guy with no experience, none of my own, buddy. And I'm going to talk to her parents about using her life savings on something I think is a good idea, but I've never done before. I realized, okay, I know my strategy going in. Don't say a word. So, she asked me to explain the deal, so I gave like a couple basic points, and then I got out of there. I zipped it.
And so, to my utter amazement, my parents sided with Michael and said, you know what, this actually seems like a really good opportunity. And like, what? Okay. And so I remember my dad said, they talked about it for a little while, and he said, Kristen, your mom and I have guaranteed our house over and over with many big deals. And to get ahead in life, you have to take big risks. And we've done that over and over and trusted that it would work out, and it always has, and hopefully it always will. So that was really encouraging to me to realize, like, okay, you know what, I'm married to someone who has vision for this. I think I can let him run with that, and we'll see what happens and see how it goes. So that's really how we came to it.
To your credit, once you learned that this wasn't like the most crazy idea out there, and there was a different way of looking at the same situation from a different, your motivations, your phase in life, all that plays into it. So once you learn, like, hey, this isn't the stupidest thing, even though it seemed like that at the beginning, you were able to evaluate it, pray about it, come to a place of peace where you're like, yeah, I think we should do this. So I give Kristen all the credit. You know what? I've told my story a number of times, Jake, you've heard it. You admit it. But, sweetheart, I've never given your investment credit for some of the later deals, but I will tonight. Because we bought our first deal in cash.
Yes, I want to just say something really quickly. I was thinking about this today. What if Michael would have really pushed me hard on that first deal? Or what if he would have said, honey, I love you, but I know what's best for our family. This is going to get us ahead. We're going to do this. That could have really jeopardized our business long term. It's a big deal to stay in unity. So just remember, your spouse will love you more if you value their judgment, their feelings. It's a really big deal. Cinco knows. He treats his woman really well. She goes by HRH, Her Royal Highness. So I just wanted to share that. Don't jeopardize your relationship for getting ahead. It is not what you want to be doing.
Play the long game. Okay. Beautiful and amazing.
Volume.
Volume up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or speak up louder.
Okay. Thanks for the feedback, Facebook. All right, let's jump into the deals. So, we're not going to go over this level of detail in each example, but I wanted you to see what we use when we're evaluating a deal. Now, since this, Jerry's gotten me onto the most complex spreadsheets you can imagine, which I actually enjoy, but I still use this as the first test of a property. And if you want this, I'm happy to make it available to anybody that sends an email to Julie. I wised up and took my email off there. Those of you that have tried to get something from me through email and haven't ever heard back. Julie is awesome at turning this around. So, just real quick, purchase price to fix up cost, total cost, appraised value, the cash invested. So we had $39,000 invested in this. The bank raised its price $1,000, so it was $26 by the time we got done. We put $13 into it. again, the bank drug their feet forever. By that time, I'd been working a great job and had saved up fix-up costs. So we were all in for $39,000. The monthly income on this thing was $825. Annual income minus 5% vacancy was $94.05. In this column, I put the actual numbers. This was from 2017. We bought this in, I think, 15. No, 13. Wow. All right, so insurance, taxes, maintenance. See that 15% number? That's a number you're never going to see on your Realtors pro forma. Caitlin, you can do things different if you want, but if you ever see a pro forma come from an investment property for sale, they're going to forget some things, okay? Vacancy doesn't exist. Maintenance is 2%. Yeah, that's fine. Management is like 4%. But you have to use realistic and conservative numbers, okay? Not everything goes according to plan. So I like to use 15% for maintenance, 10% for management, utilities. This is a single family home, so they pay their own utilities. Monthly expenses, annual expenses, and then what's left over. So the net operating income, cap rate at the purchase, cap rate after we fixed it up. Debt service is 0 on this one. Cash flow per month, per year, and the cash on cash return. So that's like the basic general plug a few things in, the rest populates idea of what something's going to look like. So if you want that, we'll put Julie's email up at the end as well. But just ask for the cash flow analysis, and happy to share that. All right, so each deal we're going to go a little bit rapid fire here. We're going to talk about the number of units, the all-in cost, how we financed it. That's kind of important, right? And the cash flow. So this is a single-family house, all in for $39,000. We financed it with Kristen's life. I mean, we could say it was both our life savings because mine was 0. But give Kristen credit for this one. Life savings, thanks to Kristen, and cash flow of $383 a month. Not bad, right? I mean, it helps when you don't have a debt payment. All right, this was deal number 2. This was a traditional single-family house. We came in, put 20% down. It was another single-family house. All-in cost of $38,000. We financed it traditionally, 20% down. I mean, so we put like $7,000 down. Okay, that's not out of reach for most of the people in the room. Bank gave us the rest, and we cash flow $350 a month. All right, this, I call it the one that changed everything. Man. We talk about this in our book, so I'll just touch on it briefly. We've talked about it before, but the concise story is Kristen got pregnant with the beautiful young lady that was up here turning 5. And so we're all excited. She says, hey, I'd love to stay at home with our kids and raise them. I'm like, hey, love that. It's awesome. Thinking, it would be nice to have something to replace your income when you're not working. So we started looking at larger properties. We found one that was actually like 3 doors down from this. If you're in Lancaster, you probably know where that's at. Like 2 or 3 doors down from this, found a property, got it under contract. The cash flow barely covered her part-time income, so we're praising the Lord, we're high-fiving, we're all excited. We end up losing that contract. The property was owned by an estate. There was a prominent real estate couple that had died. They left all their properties in an estate. The estate was then liquidating them to give the money to the heirs. And the lawyer for the estate said to the realtor for the estate, hey, don't tell the buyers this, but I found a loophole here in the contract that we can get out of this contract and sell it to these other buyers for $5,000 more. So it had to do with a specific date, so he said, don't tell them. It had to do with our mortgage contingency date. And because the commercial appraisal took longer, we didn't have an unconditional mortgage commitment by the date. If they would have told us, we would have done something different. We would have financed it a different way. But they said, don't tell them, we're going to let this date come and go, cancel their contract, and we can sell for $5,000 more. Playing the short game. So we got a call one Saturday night that we lost the contract. And we were devastated. I don't know about Kristen, I can talk for myself. I was upset. I was upset. It felt like the provision for my wife to stay home was being taken from us. So that was a Saturday night, go to bed. I woke up the next morning and completely outside of my control, I was at perfect peace. I was at perfect peace. And I'd spent enough time developing other, I'll just call them abilities. I knew what that meant. You can actually communicate with your creator. I hope you know that it's not just a one-way thing where you complain and then go on with your day. It will actually go both ways. So I knew what that meant. I said to Kristen, I said, sweetheart, God's going to use this for our advantage. This is going to work out for our benefit. Watch and see what happens. I said the same thing to our realtor. So we're out the next week and we're looking at like 2 units and 3 units. It's just little stuff. That's the only thing on the market. We're heading into a 2-unit. She looks at her phone and she says, oh, that's interesting. I said, what? She said, well, that same estate just put another property on the market. And I'm thinking, okay, you burned me once, that's on you. If I do business with no integrity person a second time, there's no longer any like, oh, that's your fault. That's my stupidity. So I'm like, I'm not going to, it would be a complete lack of wisdom to do business with a group that has no integrity. As soon as I said that to her, I felt something in my heart, and I said, wait a minute, this might be what we knew was going to come. So I said, let's go look at it. So that's enough of the backstory. What happened was, this was the last property of this estate. They had like 25, 30 properties. They saved the highest cash flowing property for the end. It was coming up on the end of the year. They wanted to get the estate closed. The family found out what the lawyer did and had integrity, and so they felt bad about what had happened. So they were eager to work with us and try to make something come together. So the last property that we lost from this estate came because of a mortgage contingency, which means we needed the bank to send them a letter by a certain date in order to fulfill the contract. I said, we are not doing that again. We're leaving no back doors, no contingencies, no inspections, no inspection contingencies or anything. We're buying this thing. So we used our first property. So I don't know if Kristen's still in here. I don't think I've ever realized this part of the story. We used that first property as collateral for a hard money loan and bought this thing in cash.
Wow.
It's amazing. Well, what happened from there is this is 10-unit building, all-in cost of $223,000. Not too hard to run the price per unit on that. Financed it how? Okay, so we bought this thing with hard money, which we can talk about later if you don't know what that is. We refinanced it right away. For whatever reason at that time, our commercial banker didn't need a seasoning period. He didn't need it to sit for a year, which is usually what they require. So within 2 months, we refinanced this thing. It appraised for $150,000 more than we bought it for. So they not only gave us all of our money back to pay off the hard money loan, so we got it for zero out of pocket. They gave us like $10,000 or $15,000 cash, and they gave us a $75,000 line of credit against the remaining equity. Wow. Amazing. Worked a little bit better in our favor than the first deal. Just a little bit. You want to know something crazy about the first deal? It was a couple years later, or maybe the next year, I was getting one of our properties cleaned by this cleaning service, and on the side of her vehicle it said, this is going to be a little bit abrupt, but it said Human Expiration Services. I was like, whoo! That one sounds like a doozy. And she's like, yeah, it is. Probably shouldn't get too graphic. I won't do it. Okay, when we looked at this other property that was a couple doors down that we really, really wanted, there was this large gentleman that acted like the guard of the property. There was a bunch of storage units out back, and he was like the guard of this property. Well, it turns out he'd been living on site, taking money, doing drug deals, doing prostitution deals, and died inside one of the warehouses of this place up on the second floor. Nobody found them for a long time. The meat in the fridge, turn the electric off. That thing deteriorated so bad it exploded, she said. She said cockroaches were like completely covering the wall. They had to carry this guy out. They drop him down the stairs. So she's telling me all this whole story, and I'm like, oh my word, that was the property that we thought we wanted so bad. And praise God, did not get. So, pretty good example to trust in the process. All right, so we financed that infinite return. Cash flow on that thing was $1,500 a month. So that was a great number to get. It was more than the other property. It was more than Kristen's part-time income at the time. But I learned something through, and the $75,000 line of credit let us keep buying, which we'll talk about. But this deal completely changed my mind. I knew that before we bought property, I knew that the game of real estate would look completely different from the inside than it does from the outside. I knew I was on the outside. That's why I said, hey, even if we lose everything, we just need to get started. Because the real learning doesn't start until you do. All of these meetings, the books, the conferences, all they're designed to do is give you enough self-confidence to pull the trigger, and then you'll actually start learning. So sometimes we think this is learning because it feels good to our brain, but it actually doesn't hit the road until you get out in the real world and do something. So what this taught me was, wow, I can buy a property. If I buy a good enough deal, it doesn't need any of my money to own it. If I can find a way to purchase it and refinance it, hey, sky's the limit. So that was actually the biggest deal of this property. All right, so the next one, man, got a lot of stories, but we'll keep it streamlined here. So this was a single-family house, all-in cost about $46,500. We financed it with the credit line. We bought it in cash, refinanced it with a permanent mortgage, and cash flowed $204 per month. What cash-on-cash return do you get when you cash flow $200 a month, but you don't have any money in the property? Infinite, my favorite number. So many people are concerned about the return on your capital. Well, what do you get in your investments? 5%, 7%, 10%, 12%, I private lend. How about the return of your capital? I'll never forget the first time I went to meet with, someday I'll start saying his name, but right now just a very well-known investor, a guy I really looked up to. And he had told me, like, hey, I like what you're doing, I want to invest with you. And so I'm like, hey, that'd be amazing. So I get this deal, and it cash flows, I don't know, 10% or something. I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. He's going to love this. Sit down with him, show him my spreadsheet, talk to him about the deal. He pushes the spreadsheet to the side. He says, when do I get my money back? I'm thinking, I thought wealthy people just wanted a return on their money. I didn't think they actually wanted it back. I thought they wanted it on the streets. I thought they wanted to make investments. And his big thing was, when will I get my money back? Because if you learn that preservation of your capital is more important than the return on your capital, you'll start to change how you look at things. So the next time I went to him, I said, yeah, you'll get it back in 18 months. He said, I'm in. Turned out being 7 months. Somebody else was laughing on that deal. That was a good one. But getting your money back is a big deal. So if you can make an investment and get your capital back, yet retain your ownership in a property, that is a way bigger deal than trying to get 6% on your money, trying to get 8% on your money, okay? So it's a little bit more complex strategy, but it is powerful. So the next one we did, 3.5 units. How do you get a half unit? Because it has additional parking lot that we rent out here. All-in cost of $131,500. We financed it traditionally, so we took 20% down from our remaining balance on our credit line, used the bank for the 80%, and bought the thing. Cash flows $506 a month. Number 6, call it a vacant, what do we call the last one? A traditional multi. A traditional is you put 20% down and you get a bank to do the rest, right? So this is a vacant multi. This thing has been sitting, it's on the corner. This property is actually right there. So it's a corner property. This thing has been vacant for years. Somebody thought it was a bright idea to, in the mini market, they wanted more space, more floor space, more selling capacity. So there was a insignificant beam in the middle of their sales floor. And they thought, well, if we just remove this beam, we'll have more space. Well, things happen when you remove beams. So that was a support structure that went all the way from the basement, all the way up to the first floor, all the way up into the second floor, and held up the roof. So you take that out over the years, you start sinking down. When the roof sinks down, you get a low spot. When you don't maintain the roof, then you get a leak. When you get a leak and no support in the same area, over time, things get ugly. So we looked at this, and I think that scared everybody off. I expected to have to jack the whole building up, cut a hole in the side of the brick, and bring a new beam in. Thankfully, I didn't follow my own advice. We brought a structural engineer in. He's like, jack the building up, put a column back in, and you'll be fine. So this thing that scared everybody else off was not a big deal at all. We got a lolly column, we jacked the building up over a period of time, put the lolly column back in, Jalen slapped the roof on it, and we were in business. So 4.5 units, all-in cost of $195. So, sweetheart, again, we did a hard money loan. So a hard money loan, they're going to protect their position. They'll never give you 100, well, that's not true, some people might. A true hard money loan won't. If you find a private lender, they might give you 100% of your purchase price, but a hard money loan won't. They're going to protect their position unless you give them additional collateral. So we gave them collateral not only on these 2 buildings, but also on our first building that we had bought with Kristen's Life Savings. So there was still no mortgage on that. So we pledged that other building and this one to get all the money we needed for this deal. So we got a hard money loan, we refinanced with traditional financing, we cash flow about $191 per month. It's a dud. But you have some of those. But we don't have any money in it, so it's not that, a dud with none of your own money in it still is not too bad. Okay, out of town experiment. All these deals had been in Lancaster. I managed all these deals, but I also knew if all I can do is buy a local property and be the one to oversee every detail of it, I'm going to severely limit my capacity. So there's people that's all they want to do. That's their comfort level. That's what they like. And if that's all you want to do, great. But I knew that I did not want to be limited by geography, and I did not want to be limited by being the only one to manage the asset. So these 2 buildings were in a town about 45 minutes away up near Harrisburg. So not too far, but still far enough away that I wasn't the manager. We have professional management on this. There's 11 units, all-in cost of $325. Financed it how? So we got a traditional mortgage for the first 80%. That other 20%, the seller held a second mortgage. So if you want clarification on that, ask me later. But basically what that is you take 80% of 325, 240,000. The other 85,000, he basically said, you don't have to pay me in cash. You sign a note promising to pay me, whatever X amount over the next 20 years, and that'll be good enough. So we show up to the closing table, the bank brings their 80%, so the seller, he bought this thing for way less than he sold it for. So he gets paid. He's happy. But because of his willingness to not get 100% of it in cash, get some over time, number one, he saved himself a lot of taxes. Number two, he widened his pool of who he could sell to, probably got a little bit more money for the deal, and we didn't have to bring any money to the closing table. It's a pretty cool strategy, and if the seller understands it, it can actually help them a lot. This thing cash flows like $1,800 a month. With, again, none of our money. So, yeah, obviously scaling takes capital or creativity. Number 8, right place, right time. This is 2 units. All-in cost on this is $82,800. We financed it how? So this is close to one of my other properties. I parked, was gonna go look at the other property, came by here, there was a for sale sign, I called on it. This guy was leaving town. I don't know what the drama was or why he needed to sell, but we bought this thing for $82,800 cash. I got a private loan. When we went to refinance this thing, it appraised at like $140,000. They gave us $30,000 in cash. So we cash flow $61 a month on this, which I'll do all day long when they're giving you $30,000 cash to buy the property. Number 9, solving problems. This is 5 units. There's a 2 unit in one of the 4 pictures there. This was an 84-year-old guy who had sold these properties, and he held all the financing. So whoever bought them didn't pay him any cash, just paid him every month a certain amount. Well, this other guy died before the elderly man did. This guy's up in Brethren Village trying to manage 5 units, and it's not going so well for him. So, actually, Eli, you and I were...
Mr. Adams.
Yeah, you and I were bidding on this. I wish I would have known and called you, because he was playing me against you. You're going to see what I paid. No, I thought it was quite a bit more. I thought.
From the first rodeo, because we kept upping it, and I finally said, Mr. Adams, I'm done.
Yeah. And he's playing us against each other. He's a wily old guy. You don't get the Brethren Village by being stupid. No, they were not nice to you. All right. So he keeps playing Eli and I off each other. We didn't know it. All-in cost of $216. No big reaction from Eli, so it might not be too bad. This was years ago. So, all right. So I bought this with 2 independent $100,000 private loans. I came up with a 16 or whatever, but I got 2 private loans. So there's people out there. You know, when you don't have money, you think the world doesn't have money. That couldn't be further from the truth. The only lack is between the ears. There's people out there, they have a problem. They don't know what to do with their money. It's sitting there losing value in the non-interest, the big money market and interest-bearing accounts of 0.25%. They know inflation's 3%. They have stress about having too much cash and no good place to put it. So that's the reality out there for some people. So I found a couple of these people who I could help. We gave them 7% interest. They gave me $100,000, and I bought real estate. Cash flow, $648 a month. That's after paying their 7% and all that. All right, this is the last one that we have for tonight. Where's our time at, Mr. Cinco? Or somebody? 8 o'clock, not too bad. We have some time for questions. All right, patience pays off. Why do I say that? This property first came on the market at $1.1 million. I didn't even waste my time looking at it. I knew, I was getting realtor emails every morning. So you can sign up for automatic emails from realtors. So as soon as a property hits the market, as soon as they adjust the price up or down, you're the first one to know about it. Might be a good idea if you're wanting to buy properties, right? So I turned those things off years ago, but I had them on here. So I saw this thing come on, 1.1. I was looking at enough property that at that time where I was like, not even interested. So it sits there on the market. Somebody completely overpriced it. Sits there for a few months and disappears. Comes back a couple months later for $800. I was like, wow, they took $300,000 off. This must be a great deal. Run all the numbers, and at the bottom is a big zero. Hey, I could break even, but it's hard to get ahead by breaking even. You can stay in bed and lose money. Why would you go out and work hard for it? So I didn't do anything with it at $800,000. It sat there for a few months. Came back on the market at $525. Finally, they got a realtor. This was the first realtor, first and only. I'm sorry if you're a realtor, maybe we haven't done business, but first and only realtor that actually valued property accurately, conservatively, for an investor, knowing what the cash on cash return is and everything else. It's amazing. The same guy that sold us our deal, when he called me the next year and said, hey, I've got an 11-unit building, I basically bought it on the phone. I was like, hey, if you're involved, I'll take it. He's like, don't you want to at least see it? I was like, yeah, I probably should. Guy that had been in the business 50 years. So he finally, the seller contacts him. He listed at $525, which was a great deal. She wanted to sell. She needed to sell. Her husband had owned the building for like 40 years. He died 5 years before, and the building was just going downhill. So it was a good situation for her to sell. So it comes back at $525. So I'm like one of the first ones to look at it. It's 13 units, about $567. We probably have, we have a lot more in it now, but we've been adding value to it. But $567 at the time, we financed it with a traditional mortgage, and we got a private loan for the equity. So went to the bank, said, hey, we need a loan for 80%. They said, well, you'll need to bring $100,000 to the table. I was like, yeah, no problem. We didn't have $100,000, but I knew someone that did. And I solved his problem, and he solved my problem. So we did a private loan, nothing on the books anywhere. No, that's not true. We gave him a second mortgage. Just a sidebar here. When you take a loan from somebody, I have a number of people that have given me money, and they're like, we don't need a mortgage, we don't need paperwork, we trust you. And it's like, that feels good. And I had a guy give me a blank check. Super wealthy guy, blank check. I didn't look at it when he gave it to me. I was like, thank you, and I left. I pulled it out later. I was like, what the world? So it's a beautiful thing to be trusted. But what happens if there's something unexpected that happens to me, and there's nothing written down? How is that me being respectful of this person that's trusting me? So while I appreciate that trust, I'm like, no, we're going to get you something recorded. We're going to bring it down to the courthouse. We're going to have it on record that you have a legal lien for what you gave me on this property. Because if something happens to me, I want you to be protected. So as nice as it feels, and you save a little bit of recording fees if you don't have paperwork, it's not very respectful to the person who's putting themselves on the line. So just a little note for your future activity. So traditional mortgage, got a private loan for $100,000, put that down. Cash flows are like $3,000 a month, and that's with free office space. A lot of you have been to our office here, and that makes me smile. So patience pays off sometimes, but so does speed, because once it came on the market, there were like 5 people that looked at it the first day, 3 offers. One was all cash for, I forget what, but one was all cash, and then there were 2 other offers. The seller said, as soon as I met you, okay, first of all, we were the highest offer, and we had an escalation clause in it, so that if someone outbid us, we would keep going up until like $550,000 or something. But we didn't need it, because I think we were $530, and somebody gave them full asking price. Listen, if somebody's asking $525 for a building worth $600,000, do you think it might be well worth it to give them like $5 or $10 or $15,000 more if that
Absolutely.
gets you the deal?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so don't get this mindset like, oh, we're always gonna undercut whatever the asking price is. That's not intelligent. But this seller, she says to me, you know, as soon as I met you, I knew you were the next one to have this building.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, it probably helped I also had the highest offer. But, yeah, Kristen and I we had a feeling about this. So that address there is 214. For the previous month, you know how I shouldn't say this publicly, but I will. You know how you have to come up with passwords and they make you have a number? Well, I just had the number 412 like stuck in my brain. This is really stupid to be putting this out on. But the pig's been committed. So I had this number 412 just in my mind, and it had nothing to do with anything. And I was just like, at the end of all my, or maybe it's at the beginning of all my passwords. 412, 412, 412, and then we get this building at 214. So it's pretty cool. All right, so let's do a recap. Number 1, 383. Number 2, 350. Number 3, 1534. 204, 506, 191. You dud. 1784, $61. That one's all right. 648 and 2974. So we'll show you the total in a second, but if you start with the one that changed everything, those 50 units, 23 months. So it was, it was a lot of work, but well worth it. The total, $8,635 per month, $100,003, $620 per year. So for us, that was enough that I quit my job. I can't even say retire because it lasted a week. But I needed it. Like, I was working 60 hours a week and doing all that, and had a little one at home. Actually, she was like 9 months old, I think, or 6 months old when I walked away from my job. So I needed that week to rest. But then my energy came back, and I wasn't about to sit in an easy chair. Okay, there's a very important line down here. Pro forma numbers are not guaranteed. Keep in mind, those are all pro forma numbers. I didn't show you like the average of the past few years. Your experience may vary. So 15% is a pretty healthy maintenance number until you buy properties like our friend had. And I mean, there have been years when I've spent like 35%, 40% on repairs and maintenance. So, when you're counting on cash flow, so what I'm saying is the picture is not always as rosy as it appears. If there's one thing I've learned, we haven't lost money on a deal, but if there's something I've learned and I feel like a mistake that we made, I'm grateful we did it because we've found a way to make it work and our lives are forever different. But it really helps to have enough money at the beginning to correct the deferred maintenance. So when you buy a property and you're counting on the cash flow, number one, to live on, number two, to also dig yourself out of the deferred maintenance hole where somebody wasn't keeping their property up to a certain level, that cash flow goes into the property. It doesn't come home to Papa. So that's what I mean by pro forma numbers are not guaranteed. There's years that have been better, years that have been worse, but you want to keep that in mind. So if you remember one thing, well, maybe not one thing, there's, I think, some more important things that were shared tonight, but this is a big one. Build assets that will pay you to own them. Robert Kiyosaki talks about the rich don't work for money. What do they work for? Assets. Assets. If you can focus on collecting assets that will pay you to own them,
Yes.
your life will be different. For as long as your only means of income is trading your time for money, there will always be a lack of freedom, I'm just going to say. Now, many people love their jobs. I've talked to people that are super wealthy, they wouldn't have to work another day in their life. They show up to work every day and they love it. So I think sometimes, well, a lot of times, we fantasize about the word retirement. You know, when you're working hard and you're slaving away, retirement sounds really good. But it's a short-sighted goal.
Yeah, that's right.
I fully admit I was turned on by it. I mean, that motivated me for years. But when we got there, it was like, okay, this is actually pretty empty. Yeah, so those are some cool friends, some cool mentors. So you're financially free, now what? We make this the goal, and it's a great stop along the way, but it's a poor destination. It's a poor destination. For me and Kristen, we reevaluated everything when we hit that point. I had built, my future after that point was a complete blank slate. I had nothing. I thought it was,
Yeah.
I don't know, inactivity. And I told myself more time with the family, more time to do mission stuff. It was actually empty. Because while you're slaving away, it feels good to think about resting, but resting is actually not where the reward is.
That's right.
Living out who you've been created to be is the reward. Having a purpose and fulfilling it is the reward.
Amen.
So Kristen and I, we sat down and we said, okay, we could do anything. Do I do ministry stuff? Do I do nothing? That was on the table. We realized in a lot of prayer, a lot of talking, we absolutely loved what we were doing, but up until that point, we'd owned everything. If I was going to have a partner in a deal, it was going to be a private loan. I was going to say, I'm going to fix your return at a number I can live with, and I'm going to take everything on top. Because I was making a whole lot more than 7% on the $100,000 checks I was getting. But again, it was short-sighted, and it was unfulfilling. It was so much fun for Kristen and I to make money, and our lives, again, would never be the same. But we said, what if we kept doing what we were doing, but we built a community where we could do it with other people, where we could help other people, where we could be helped by other people. You know, what if we did this thing with others? So, I mean, honestly, for what we were dreaming about that day, you're sitting in it. That's what this group is about. We wanted to build a community where we could all go further by interfacing together than either of us could just in our own silo, working hard. So Jerry and I absolutely love this group. My wife loves it. Our families love it. We'll talk about some other areas of community. So I doubt everybody knows, but we have a very small private mentoring group where we help people that have had some level of success learn how to syndicate larger deals. So, you know, if you've been on your investing journey and you've been using your own cash, you know, only having one checking account to dip into is limiting. Doesn't matter how big the number is. You know, this is Dave Zook sharing with our group. You know, he tells a story that he bought, you know, hundreds of apartments and eventually ran out of money. So even when you're Dave Zook, you run out of money. So if you learn how to put deals together using other people's money, where you can help them, they can help you, the sky's the limit. Does anybody know Will Hart?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had Will to the house. This is Jerry's dining room, very intimate. If you're in our mentoring groups, you mind just standing up? We absolutely love these people. Jonathan, Eli, Nate was here somewhere. Good guys to know. If you need somebody to know in real estate, seek these guys out. But this was amazing. So Will is, he actually has 800 employees as the CEO of Iris. But we didn't talk about employees. He's a world-renowned minister, and it was unbelievable. We do on-site stuff. So some of the stuff I shared tonight would be in this book. This is another thing that if you want to get this message into somebody else's hands, we will have the recording available. But we also co-authored an Amazon #1 bestseller book. Jerry's in it, Robert Helms is in it, a bunch of other awesome guys. I think we'll have them at the back. Somebody will be back there. If you'd like, I'm happy to sign them, either to you or to someone else. This is something that has been a ton of fun, our investor club. So this is designed for investors who want to invest with a team approach. You know, some people want to do everything themselves. And I knew that I wanted to start there. I knew that I wanted to learn the thing inside and out, top to bottom, do every part of it myself. But I also knew I didn't want to stay there. So we put opportunities together. They're public and non-public. Some we can talk about, most of them we can't. For accredited and non-accredited, if you don't know what either of those means, you can ask in the question time. And there's never any obligation. You know, you can look at a deal and learn as a student without ever being pressured into doing something. You know, if business is about providing value and giving more in value than it costs to either buy or invest, you don't have to coerce. You don't, I mean, it's nauseating. Kristen and I say we're punished for our greed in Mexico. Daryl probably knows where this is going. So we get off the airplane and we're in the little Mexican airport, and they're like, Senor, we need a ride? Yeah, we need a ride. So 25 minutes later, not only do we have a ride, but we have a discount on scuba diving. And he said, oh, you know, we can give you a big discount if you do a tour of the property and we show you everything. And you don't have to buy, but you just let us show you. I said, my friend, we are here for vacation. We are not here for that. So no thank you. And so he said, okay, no problem. I'll still give you the discount. So he gave us the discount. Guess what? We get to the hotel. The discount doesn't work unless you do the little thing. So in a moment of lapsed judgment, I said, Kristen, let's just do the lunch. Well, I can just say we made a decision at the end of that lunch that we would never do one of those things again. The discount was nice, but it was not worth it. And I asked the guy, I was like, are you trying to make us feel bad for not buying this thing? Right. And then he brought me to the next manager. I was like, sir, we're not buying. You're trying to make us feel bad for not buying. You said we didn't have to buy. We're not interested in buying. I was very respectful, but we were also firm and got out of there. But we were punished for our greed. That's the problem with sleazy salesmen, is they try to, you know, the first half an hour was him telling his story of Mexico City and getting robbed at gunpoint and moving his small family to Cozumel so he could have a better life. And I knew the whole time was like, okay, why are you telling us all this? All for manipulation from a place of personal influence and opening your heart. So, it just sucks, because then when you actually want to help people, we've all had these kind of experiences where there's like tripwires, and it's like, oh, you asked me a question of, you know, what problem could you help me solve? I don't want to give you that, because then you're going to beat me up with it later. So please don't be those salespeople. Please be people that actually genuinely want to help. If you understand the laws of creation, you will know that if you help others, if you give, it'll be given unto you.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about the receiving part. If you give, it will be given.
Yes.
If you just focus on the give part, I mean, there's 2 people tonight that have paid to be here. And it's nobody out there. It's that guy sitting in the corner, and it's me. So we're focusing on the giving part because that starts the process, okay? So please don't be a sleazy salesman. If you want to get on the investor club, you can see Julie. We have feedback forms that I'm going to ask you to fill out at the end, or you can email her. Pretty simple process. We have a questionnaire because we're actually legally required by the SEC to find out some information about our investors. We'll jump on a phone call, and upon approval, we'll get you on an email list. And when we have opportunities, you will be the first to know. All right. Hey, this has been another amazing and fun and incredible experience that has come as a result of this community. So in June of last year, we did Elevate Summit. So it was 2 days at the downtown Lancaster Convention. How many people were there? How many people would come back? Okay, the hands went down, but they came back. I was getting nervous there. It was amazing. It was incredible. So when you have an awesome group like this, people will fly in to talk to us. It's pretty incredible. So you have Amos and Liz, we have Jerry and Sue, obviously. Amos and Liz, awesome local friends, amazing people. Bob Helms is the godfather of real estate. Dana Samuelson has American Gold Exchange. He assured me that this year there would be less charts and more dialogue. He got really technical last year, but amazing man. If you believe in holding physical gold and silver, he's a great one to talk to buy that. Robert Helms blew the doors off the place. It was amazing. Dave Zook was incredible. April Crosley is awesome. Going to be at Caitlin's group this month, right? Is that next? March 17th. So that'll be next Tuesday, I think. Kyle Wilson, amazing man. Colonel Tim Cole, unbelievable quality guy. So, we have this whole group of crazy people. Sometimes I just look at this picture and entertain myself. I mean, there's just so many funny faces here. It's awesome, but getting in a group, getting in a community is where life is. Kristen and I, we love being at home and we love, just hanging out with the family. But there's just something special about connecting with other people. When I look at this crowd and I look out here, some of you that don't know who's sitting next to you, you'd be amazed at the successful people that come out to these meetings. And sometimes we're too locked up in ourselves to meet the people around us. But I've heard of deals happening from getting to know people, finding out about stuff that's available. So there's deals happening in the room. There's people that would let you take them to coffee, and you could learn incredible things sitting next to you. So here's a little clue. They're feeling nervous too. So somebody just has to be courageous and say hi. People wouldn't be here if they didn't want to get to know somebody else.
Yeah.
You can watch from Facebook. So if you're in the room, you're here because it'd be cool to meet some other cool people who love investing, but also love character, love being a good person. So get to know the people next to you. All right, with that, we came through our story. I want to thank everyone for coming. Don't leave yet because we are doing questions. And I just put this up here because this is honestly what we strive for. Jerry and I, along with our amazing team, we pray tonight and every meeting is inspirational and transformational for many of you. So thank you so much for coming. We're going to do questions and answers. If I could get a volunteer to help run a microphone. If there's anything that I talked about that you want more information or you want the cash flow analysis, email Julie or me. I put both of them there. And with that, love to open it up for questions. If anybody has any, or we can go on.
So you talked about all the great cash flow deals you did, you didn't mention anything about equity. So what happened with that in the past 5 years or so?
So this was our first 10 deals. We've obviously done more deals since then. The last deal we did was a $20 million apartment complex in Dallas, Fort Worth that we would have never done if all we did was our little properties in Lancaster. So it takes a team. It certainly wasn't all of us. We're a small part of that. But as a community, we're able to do a lot bigger things now. Let me just say that at this point, we had over $1 million in equity. So, you know, it just blows my mind. I mean, blows my mind. Come off the mission field with nothing, and within a few years, you know, the cash flow to me is honestly more important than the equity. I mean, you're both like neck and neck. But the cash flow is what you can live on. Equity feels nice.
Right.
Yeah.
But to have $1 million in equity after just being in something for a couple years blows my mind. But what I hope is that now some of you sitting there are like, hey, that's a good start. That's like, okay, you know, you're level 1, buddy, which is how I feel. And some people are like, man, if I could, you know, achieve that in the next 30 years, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Wherever level you're at, you at least know it's possible. You at least know, like, hey, this thing can be done. And now I know somebody that did it. So that's truly what I want to come out of tonight.
That's good.
Michael, you, when you spoke about conventional financing, 80% on the value of the property, or on the selling price, I guess is the way that works.
Yep.
In my life, one of the questions that always comes up was the bank asks you, is any part of the down payment borrowed?
Yeah.
So what do you do with that other 20% second mortgage that you get privately or whatever? If it's recorded, it's on the record, so how do you work around that?
Well, I mean, if somebody asks you, is any part of your down payment borrowed, I would be honest with them.
Yeah.
Here's something that completely switched for me. When I left my full-time job, all of a sudden the residential bankers were not my friends. They did not want to talk. So, but what I found was credit unions and commercial bankers were outside the normal, rigid, strict ratios where, hey, you either meet these ratios or not. There's no intelligence in this. You check every box, meet every ratio, debt to income, you know, all this stuff. So when we didn't fit that box, we were buying bigger properties. And commercial bankers are allowed to use their head. They're allowed to think. So when you lay out the situation of somebody's financials, and the person is intelligent and can say, oh, this makes sense. Yeah, you borrow the down payment or the seller held a second, but your debt coverage ratio is 1.7. You know, so they're looking for 1.2. You got great cash flow on the property, you got great cash flow over there. So, yeah, you have to get creative if you're gonna scale like this, and maybe sometimes just to do the next deal, you have to get creative. But one thing that I found is commercial bankers and also credit unions. They're under a different oversight system, and they've been pretty good about being able to use their head and say, you know what, I think this is a good credit risk. Now, if you're borrowed, you know, 98% on your whole portfolio and you have 100 properties and $25,000 of net worth, I mean, you can't expect a bank to go with that. But if your situation makes sense, you find a good enough deal, you're able to talk to someone that isn't stuck within a small list of what they can and can't do, you can keep moving.
You might have just answered part of my question. I was just going to ask, how'd you get so many traditional loans without having, you know, that much income recorded?
Right. So when I had my full-time job, they would give them to me, you know, they were very supportive. When I didn't have my full-time job, they were not so supportive. So then it came down to the commercial, you know, I had to go commercial. And some of the deals we did privately, you know, so we got it done privately. I feel like if you are going to refinance on a property, the bank, I think, has less anxiety about a refinance than they do about a purchase.
Yep.
Because here, you've had the property for a year, you have, you know, real data on how it's operated, you've proven you can handle this property. So if you find a way to buy it with cash, privately, hard money loan, whatever, but listen people, hard money loans, private loans, it is more risky. Sometimes the banker telling you no is saving you from doing a bad deal. So I'm not saying that just anybody can go out and do these kind of deals and everything's rosy, because it worked for us. You're increasing your risk when you use hard money. You're increasing your risk when you borrow 100% of the purchase price. So it's not just to go, please don't hear me say, like, you know, this is the only way to do it, or it's it's a safe way. But if you bring a refinance deal to a bank, a credit union, or a commercial bank, I feel like they have more comfort with that. Another thing somebody told me, and it's been very true, and I'll pass it along, is that, you know, your first couple properties, you walk into the bank, you're the zero property person buying your first one, you have a W-2 job, and it's kicking off some good cash. You know, the banker's smiling and high-fiving. You do a couple more deals, and they're like, okay. 4, 5, 6 deals in, 23 months, 50 deals, whatever. They're not so comfortable anymore. So you can get stuck. Some people are like stuck with one bank, just because of the relationship. Listen, I'm all for relationships, long-term relationships. The bank's relationship is a different relationship than what you're thinking. They use that word because it means something different to us than it does to them. Not all bankers, but they're evaluating you as a risk. So if you want to keep growing and your banker tells you no, the time you walk into the next bank, you're already the 5 deal guy. You walk in as the 5 deal guy and you want number 6. So what? So then you get 6, 7, 8, 9. All of a sudden you're the 10 deal guy and they still see you as the 5 deal guy. And they're like, why don't you slow down? Come back next year. I'll come back. Never. I'll come back when I want to refinance one of my existing things. You go to the next bank, you walk in as the 10 deal guy or lady. So, does that help, Jordan? Mr. Video, we should be asking you questions.
I don't know about that. But on the 11-unit deal you mentioned you use seller financing and pitched that as a tax incentive to the seller. Is there something there that I'm not aware of, some tax strategy? Because I know that's generally not the case.
So, as I understand it, and I'm not a CPA, the seller will only pay tax on the realized gain. So if you have a $200,000 property that the guy bought for $50,000, or say his basis in it is $50,000, you buy it for $200,000, he's got $150,000 of capital gains to pay. If you talk him into keeping the first mortgage, and you give him a note for $150,000 and $50,000 cash, as I understand it, he doesn't have to pay tax until you start repaying the mortgage.
Yeah.
And then your mortgage principal payments would be taxable.
That's right.
But what can happen is a guy sells a property for $200,000 and realizes $150,000 gain, all of a sudden he's in the next tax bracket. So he's not just paying 20% in taxes, he's now paying 30% in taxes. So not only does he have a big gain to realize and pay taxes on it, he's paying a higher percentage on that gain and also on the income that he would have paid. So you keep them from having to pay that tax, and you can ask them what they're going to do with the money. They're going to stick it in a savings account at 0.25%. Let me pay you 4%. Let me pay you 5, 6, 7. Whatever you need to do to have the deal make sense. But is that?
I am not sure that you're correct on that. I'm not
Ooh,
correct.
challenge. Hey,
You are correct.
You are correct.
Yeah.
what's the other guys? I saw you shaking your head.
You are correct, sir. You're correct.
So maybe we should both check.
I'm
on
not
that.
arguing you on that.
The other thing with seller financing that I'll just say is, in the 11-year deal, the guy was an experienced investor. He was very familiar with it. He suggested it. So if a seller has no idea about seller financing and you propose the idea, just be aware that they're probably going to hear you saying, I don't have any money. Whoa. Checking for updates. It's good timing. He hears you saying, I don't have any money. So just be aware of that. It works when the seller has to have an idea, otherwise you're going to make somebody uncomfortable. So just keep that in mind. You can lose a deal by trying to make it better. If it works as traditional, sometimes the best thing to do is just pay the seller his money, get the deal, and don't try to squeeze everything out of it.
Some questions on here.
Okay, cool, awesome. Can we
here.
go here
All right.
to Facebook?
Thanks for sharing.
That's
Great.
it, man.
So I had a question, when you were looking at properties, how much were you rehabbing them, or were you mainly looking for move-in ready properties?
I loved move-in ready. If I could just buy something and start cash flowing from day one, that was by far my favorite type of property. I did get some vacant ones that I had to remodel, but to be very honest, we were scraping everything that we could to get into these properties the whole way along. So, I laugh at, I don't laugh, Jordan, I giggle. At our maintenance guys now, because we just finished a couple gorgeous renovations. So we just spent a ton of money on some properties because it's a little bit different now. It's a different time in our in our journey, and so then you feel like you always have to spend money on properties. I think back to 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's like, dude, I want to clean this thing and put the next person in, and now I'm spending a couple $1,000s on it just because I can. You can't do that. Well, I can't do that forever. You still have to be. The cash is the lifeblood of your business, and so you have to manage that as you go. You can get wrong side of that real quick. So we still try to be very cash efficient with what we're doing. But I really tried to buy fully rented, just buy it, start cash flowing.
Is there if I has 2 more questions?
Sure, man.
So where were you getting the deals? Were they on market or were they off market?
Honestly, most of these were on market. Some of them were off market. It's been the last few years that we haven't bought anything on market. There's relationships. And by the way, one of the things I wanted to say with the Investor Club, if you have a big deal, it should be $1 million plus. If you have a great deal that you don't know how to finance, that's the other part of this community. Come talk to me. We have resources that are looking for good deals. If you have a good deal that's looking for resources, come talk to me. So, yeah.
And then what were some daily action steps that you were taking or would recommend someone else taking to find the first deal?
I would get on a realtor's list. You got Caitlin, you got Benuel, Dave Garps, this is usually here. There's some good realtors that understand investment properties. I was helped so much by the realtors that helped me buy property. Heather Mellinger was the first one, and she was awesome. She had done it for 30 years and had property, and so it really helps to be with somebody who you can bounce ideas off. Who, when you walk the property, they're seeing stuff, and it's not just the owner-occupied realtor who has no idea, and they're just looking at it from a different perspective. So I'd get on those auto lists. A lot of the meetup groups, they'll cater to wholesalers and things like that, and I think they even let you announce at the beginning of a meeting, if you're looking for deals or you're a wholesaler or whatever. So I would go to those meetings and get on wholesale lists. I mean, it takes work, it's not easy, but those are a couple ways to get started. That's a Facebook question. Very cool.
Yeah, one of the questions from online is, did you apply for loans as a business or as an individual?
Always individual. And even once you know, you can get real entity heavy, and we are. But at the beginning, you don't need, I don't feel like you need all kinds of entities. Your first line of defense is always gonna be insurance. So, you know, we bought a few properties in our personal name before we started making entities to buy our properties in. But even when we buy it in an entity, they're getting a personal guarantee from us. So I never worried about trying to get it in the business name, or I just did them all in my personal name. Or even if it's in the business name, they'll have the owner, the principals of the entity sign a personal guarantee.
Right.
So it all comes back home anyway.
Good.
Just the one question?
I think the other one was answered, yeah.
Okay, cool.
For the $100,000 pro forma, if that was before repairs or not.
Yeah, those numbers were what we put into the property, we bought it and put into it. Now, we've added some later, but then you get a rent increase. You don't fix up a property without a rent increase. So the rent increase pays for those fix-ups. So I left them out just to keep it
Sort of
simple.
fixed.
Yes, sir.
When you look for properties, do you look for properties for rental, or do you also purchase some for turning around and reselling?
So my personal journey is I've never flipped anything. There's a mindset out there that I've come across where it's like, you have to flip to have the money to buy a rental, or it's like you graduate from flipping to buying rentals. And I knew what my goal was. I knew that my goal was passive income. So why would I, and you know, there's different strategies. You know, flipping can be a good business. You got a guy in the back there that does a great business with it, but I had no interest in it. It didn't make sense for me to do something that I didn't want. I limited myself to do what I wanted to do, and I let my creativity find a way to do it. So there are ways that you can just go straight to rentals. We did that. It's nice to have money, trust me. It's a lot easier if you have money, but there are ways to be creative. Yes, sir.
For me, first, thank you for whatever you give.
Happy to,
for this.
thank you.
Yeah. For me, it looks like the first deal plays a great role for the next deals. The first house that you guys bought.
Yeah.
For the person who just starts,
Right.
what do you recommend?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, we started with $25,000. That's not everybody's situation.
Might be a line of credit.
Yeah, line of credit, but if you don't have assets, how do you get that?
Private money.
You know, private loans are a great way. The thing that I didn't respect until later is the value of partnerships, the value of other people. So there's something that you have to offer, and you know, you might not know what it is, and it might not make itself clear for, you know, where it's just right there, and you can say, hey, Mr. Successful Investor, I could do this for you. But if you look for the resources that you do have, you know, don't focus on what you don't have. If you focus on what you do have, and you're out there building relationships, there's incredible power when people come together. There's beautiful things that can happen from that. And it took us several years to realize, like, hey, I mean, we did some private loans and that was great, but the true partnership, the true, like, you know, let's make something together is a really powerful thing. So that may be an angle that you can come with. You know, there's courses out there that some of them cost big money. I'm sure there's education online that you can get where, you know, you're finding subject to deals, and you know, there's some more abstract things out there that have worked for people. I can't speak to that, I haven't done that, but the desire is what will open the doors. So if you have something in you that's, you know, you're not just seeing it up here and you're like, hey, that'd be nice, you know, try it for a couple weeks and you're like, that, we're gonna do something else. But if you have a true desire on something, that will do a lot for you. So, hope that helps.
I actually have two questions. For the first one, do you put the work in yourself or do you hire someone to do the work for you?
Question number one, I do not do the work myself. Now, I used to have like a little bag of tools where I'd have a screw gun and I had a whole little bag of tools, caulk, whatever. And if I was going out to, because a tenant would make a service call and I'd go out to see what the problem was. Sometimes it was something real simple, you flip a breaker and you saved yourself a $75 maintenance call. Or the toilet needs a new handle, so I buy a handle at Home Depot and go replace a toilet handle. Praise the Lord, I do not do those things anymore.
But you used to.
But I used to, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you gotta get it done, man, you just get it done.
But you say like you do the basics, right? You would call it like details.
Yeah, if I didn't know how to do something, hey, thanks for coming, guys. If I didn't know how to do something, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I wasn't doing electrical or plumbing or HVAC, but, if you need a new deadbolt, I would take the deadbolt off, take it to the locksmith, get it rekeyed, put it back on, stuff like that. Some of those little things add up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking for someone who wants to start that, but they can really like hold a hammer, and not have like capital to hire contractors to do all the work,
Yeah.
Like
Well, while you're not holding a hammer, hopefully you're somewhere else making money to pay the guy that can.
Okay.
So, you just pay for the service.
Yeah, the second question is, hiring a management company versus managing the properties yourself. What's your opinion on that? Like, what's the best way to go?
So, yeah, we have a management company. We manage all of our own not all of our local properties. And it'd be great to say, oh yeah, it's a great strategy. Listen, most people should not manage properties. It is, it's not an easy business. It's professional babysitting a lot of times. And if you don't have, I call it grace for it, if you don't have, if I want to say emotional stability, if you can't take some abuse and separate the person reacting from the actual value of the person and let that stuff slide while you respect the person, you deal with the issue, it's not for everyone. When we bought our first one, it was a whole nother year before we bought another one. And then after that second one, it was 6 months before we bought the one that really changed stuff for us. So I was very aware that I might not like it. It wasn't like I was locked into this thing. I was like, let's start slow, let's see how this goes. If I like the business, if I like managing it. Now, with all that said, do you think a property management company is gonna care about your property like you do? Listen, we try, but it's like, no, you can't. And everybody has their own preferences. So, hey, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have spent money on that, or I would have spent money on, something else. So there's challenges with property management, but if you don't enjoy it, have the time for it, or are good at it, you should hire it. And you just have to leave enough margin in your deal. You saw a 10% management fee in my pro forma. I was the one managing, but I still put 10% in my pro forma because, hey, if I don't want to manage it, I don't want to have a dead deal because I didn't think ahead and account for a management reserve. So even if you're the one managing, I would still not buy a deal if there isn't enough margin to pay a manager.
That's right.
And hopefully you're valuing your own time as well. So,
Last question from here. What did you provide realtors whenever they ask you for proof of funds?
proof of funds.
Yeah. Okay, there is your
It
answer.
wasn't always mine. It wasn't always mine. So if I had to get a partner on the deal, I'd get a partner on the deal and get a proof of funds letter.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I have just one quick one, please, Michael. When you do your syndication projects and you call them partnerships, do you have a range you'd like to be in percentage-wise for those partners?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if we can't, if we're looking at a pro forma deal and projecting out, at least 5-year average, if we can't hit 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% cash on cash return, we wouldn't look at it unless there's some other strange reason to do the deal. And then like a total return, because, you know, with real estate, you have the cash on cash. I only showed the cash flow, the cash that was left over after all expenses, including mortgage, cash in our account that we could go out and buy groceries with. There's other ways that you get paid in real estate. So the property appreciates. And does it appreciate on your down payment or on the purchase price? Purchase price. So if appreciation, let's just say it's 4%. I mean, you hear places where it's average of 8% forever for real estate. Let's just say it's 4%. If you have none of your own money in it, or you have a 20% down payment, and that 4% is not on your 20%, it's on the 100%, that's like 16% of what the gain actually is relative to the cash that you have in the deal. So appreciation, you're paying down the mortgage, or more accurately, your tenants are paying down the mortgage.
Amen.
You know, so a lot of people get so scared of debt. Listen, if I told you, hey, Daryl's gonna give you $1 million, but I'm gonna make your payment, so you don't have to worry about it. Would that be good debt or bad debt? That would be good debt. Okay? Yeah. So your tenants are making your mortgage payment for you. You know, we're not advocating debt for a boat where that has to come out from your own account. I mean, get a boat if you want it, but that's not what we're talking about here. So when somebody else pays the debt for you, that's a good situation. They are increasing your equity and net worth with each payment. There's inflation protection and tax benefits and other things. So there's other ways. So, you know, we're gonna shoot for, let's just say 8% as a minimum, cash on cash, physical cash that you receive, average over 5 years. And then we wanna see a total return 13, 15, 18% by the time you add the rest of that in there. But the thing that probably makes us different is I've done all kinds of different deals. You know, when you have more tools in your tool bag, not every problem looks like a nail. You've heard it said, if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail and you either hit it or you go on to the next problem. If you have a bunch of different tools, you can actually conform the strategy to the deal that you have in front of you.
That's right.
So when we look at a deal, we don't say like, hey, it's gotta be 8%, it's gotta be this, it's gotta be that. I mean, we bought it, I shouldn't even talk about that deal. But we buy deals where, hey, you're not gonna see any cash for 2 years. But then we're expecting 80% of your cash to come home or more. So, you know, the guy that, or the lady that wants cash flow every single month, they might not like that deal. But if you understand, boy, if I give you all my money and I get 80% back in 2 years, that's actually a 40% return over 2 years. That sounds, and then after that, you know, such and such a return, hey, that actually sounds pretty good. You know, so we're looking at what deal do we have in front of us, what's the best strategy for it. So we do some different things like that, where it's not a straight, I call it a yield play, where it's fully stabilized, put your money in, you know, first month, we just did a deal like this, first month, 8% auto deposit in your checking account, and we're gonna hold the thing, improve it a little bit, and in 5 years sell it. You know, there's some cookie cutter deals like that, but there's also like, hey, this thing is 40% occupied, we need to turn it around, but in 2 years, you should get your money back.
Right.
So there's, and maintain ownership, that's the important part.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Yes, sir, John?
Yeah, Michael, on the ones that you cashed out refied, where did you park your money that you got back on the refi? Like you said, you got 30,000 back on the one.
I was gonna say in my private lender's pockets, but, yeah, $30,000, I mean, that goes into our cash management. I mean, we might have put it on the next deal, we might have fixed up a unit a little better. Sometimes we'll just try to stick a chunk over there and be like, we're gonna pretend that doesn't exist, because, you know, the cash is what's gonna keep you alive if you need it. So, yeah, you know, we didn't go on vacation with it, you know, we use it for
You paid
business.
tax on that debt, right?
What's that?
I said you didn't pay tax on that debt either, right?
Yeah, we didn't pay tax on the debt. until we pay the mortgage payments. So, yeah. Yeah, when you refinance and you pull capital out, you don't have to pay tax on that money, which is a pretty cool thing.
That's amazing.
All right, guys, anybody else? All right, well, listen, these meetings are such an unbelievable honor for myself, for Jerry. Your time and attention are more valuable than any check you're gonna write, or anything else you're gonna do. So we value that greatly, we value each of you. Appreciate you, we love this community, love the people here. So thank you so much for coming. Strongly encourage you to get to know the people next to you. Man, Julie, you brought me a note and I still almost did it. Wow. I'm a special breed. So we have feedback forms that were on your seat. We don't ask for much with the meeting, but if you could fill those out, let us know what you thought of it. That would be awesome. We appreciate that. And you know, most of the people that sit here don't know how much work these things actually take to put on. Julie, you're missing a name on here. Our volunteers are like seriously unbelievable. Julie comes into my office and she's like, "You're not gonna believe our volunteers. We're 2 weeks ago and I'm calling Austin Mountain on something else and he's like saying, hey, so I should be there at 6 o'clock to help put everything together." Jake Byler, amazing, just so consistent, so awesome. Nate and Valerie Cap, I don't know if you guys are still here, but oh, you are. Awesome, yeah, awesome people, so generous. Austin Mountain, Dave Stoltzfus, so generous. Louis Vanderhorst, the man behind the camera, making it happen for everybody on Facebook. My beautiful mom helped at the front desk. Thank you, Mom. Appreciate it. And Julie Kurtz is seriously amazing. This woman is seriously amazing. So thank you, Julie. Thank you to all our volunteers. Appreciate you very much. These meetings are going a whole lot better than they did when we started, and I was trying to do everything like a chicken with my head cut off to Sunday before. So very grateful for all of you. God bless you. If you have questions, you need something, let us know. All you graphic designers that are cringing right now, I'm sorry, but you can take a picture of this and look at the details later. If there's something that we can help you with, we are happy to do that. God bless. Have a great night. Thank you. Feel free to hang out and talk as long as you want.